Welcome to the Vault podcast and reviews, where music still matters. You can check out all our shows at YouTube, iTunes, Stitcher, and Podomatic. Please rate, review, and most importantly, subscribe. Also, make sure to check us out on social media, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. And if you like what we're doing and you'd like to contribute to help us keep the show going, check out patreon.com/thevault. So every once in a while, you'll come across an album and you just completely fall in love with it. You listen to it over and over again. You can't get enough of it. And not to try to spoil the review on my end, but that's what we got today. Obsequiae, Aria of Vernal Tombs. Brent's here to review it with us today. Brent, have you heard of this band before?
I had not until you're like, hey, we're reviewing this. So,
all right, another surprise. And just, I guess maybe to put a little spoiler out there, are you as high on it as I was?
Very damn close. So,
all right. So this is a band from Minnesota. I found this Trevor from Black Dahlia Murder put out a list. I think it was on Metal Sucks or Metal Injection something, and he was listing like the top 50 underground bands you need to know. And a lot of them were just they were kind of run of the mill death metal or grind or something. But then I heard this one, and he kind of prefaced by saying the word from Robin Hood, Prince of Thieves, with Kevin Costner, and there was the line in there when they're getting ready to do a hanging scene where he's like, "No blades, no bows, leave your weapons here," and that's exactly what he said. He's like, "This album sounds like Robin Hood," and I'm like, "No way!" So I checked it out, and man, he was dead on. This album could easily be a soundtrack to that movie, or like the original Age of Empires games or something like that. Do you think that's pretty accurate, Brent?
oh yeah, the entire time I was sitting there listening to it, it's like, man, I need to get this so I can jam it while I'm playing some Dark Souls.
Yeah. Or on your way to a Renaissance fair.
Oh, exactly. I mean, yeah.
So yeah, this album has a super like medieval overtone to it, but it's still black. It's black metal, I would say. There's several just straight up harp instrumentals. What'd you think about those?
I thought it was amazing, and because honestly,
those may be my favorite songs on the CD.
Yeah, easily. Because what's really strange is a lot of I listen to a lot of kind of, I guess, medieval themed kind of music.
Right.
I'm a huge power metal fan. I love like all Viking metal. I enjoy pagan metal. And all it ends up sounding very similar. And that's one thing I really enjoyed about this, because some of that can get really, really cheesy.
Yeah, I agree.
And it's like they're just doing it for an effect. They're doing it just, for whatever. I don't want to, kind of put a band in this, but like, they're doing it to be part of the scene kind of sound is almost kind of what some of them get. And this one avoids all of that. I mean, it comes across completely authentic, which I think is almost impossible to pull off nowadays, but they managed to do it in a very, very well done manner.
Yeah, I totally agree. I was thinking the same thing. I was actually getting ready to say that before you did, about how a lot of the bands, they basically try to use the instruments from the past, from their culture,
right,
to implement into metal or rock or whatever style of music they're trying to do. And a lot of times, like you kind of get the point, like, oh, these guys are trying to be pirates. Oh, these guys are trying to use a lot of bagpipes, and I must know where they're from.
Right.
But they don't pull it off. Like it almost seems like a gimmick. This does not seem like a gimmick. I looked up a live shot of these guys, and they just seem like a band. This is what they play. Are you familiar with Wolves in the Throne Room?
I've listened to a little bit. I haven't really delved into them, but
that's kind of what, they're just kind of the ambient black metal, yeah. And the harsh vocals, but I don't know, it's kind of like a harsh whisper loudly, if that makes sense. And that's kind of how the vocals are on this one. And it fits with the music well, but when you would hear this kind of music, kind of going back to what you said, it seems like it would be like you'd expect a power metal singer to be on this, and it's not, which I think is an interesting mix. Before we kind of go into any more details, you got anything else?
No, I think it's hard to, until you actually sit down and listen to the album, and it honestly, I think, has to be listened from the very first note to the very last one to actually grasp it. At least that's how it worked for me. In my head, I had to listen from the beginning to the end without skipping anything. for it to actually make sense in my head. And maybe that's just me. I don't know. Maybe I'm retarded. But it's amazing how well it's done because, you know, you've got bands like, I mean, this is a little different genre and stuff, of course, but you got bands like Ailstorm and even like Insiferum and some of those, and it comes across really cheesy. And like you said, you expect this power metal singer, this kind of power metal voice, and you get this, you know, beautiful black metal, just, you know, growly stuff. And I thought it was great. So
yeah, I agree with you about listening to it, you know, from start to finish. What happened with me is I found this album on YouTube. I know a lot of people hate the digital, but hey, you know, this is the new tape trading, really. I mean, in 2016. So I jump on there, and from the opening harp track leading into the first track, which is Automobile, I was hooked. And I listened to this album start to finish 3 times in a row. And I then immediately went to their label site, $20 spin, and ordered the vinyl. And I've just been jamming ever since. It never gets old, really. There's some things I can nitpick, which we'll get to later on, but just, you know, start to finish, fantastic album. We already kind of touched on the vocals. You got anything else to add on the vocals?
No, just I think very well done.
All right, so musically, you know, we said this is kind of a medieval with the black metal mix. I mean, that almost is one in the same at times. In black metal, they use a lot of medieval stuff, but especially with those sweet weapons, you know, it's the old school. They always have they're always making like the mean face with the random weapon.
Right.
It's always classic.
Right.
But this is more, it's so hard to describe. I mean, there's a lot of interesting riffs, and the riffs change. The songs change. It's slower paced. There's not a lot of like blast beats and stuff there are some of those, but interesting listen, start to finish. It's really hard to do a review actually now that we've started this, because it's hard to describe what's going on now. I mean, what else can you think about musically?
If it wasn't for the vocal stylings and just kind of the overall sound of it doesn't come across as overly black metal.
Yeah.
Once you put everything together, it is. But if you just listen to like the musicianship and everything, and like you said, how all the riffs change. I mean, every song is different. Even the ones that have very similar elements are all completely different songs. They all can stand alone, but then again, I think they're just amazing put together. But it's almost like, you know, you get the like awesome music and stuff from, I don't want to go back to power metal, but it's kind of the closest analog. But it's not power metal. It's not fast. It's a lot slower. But that's kind of the level of musicianship I think you actually are getting on this. And that's honestly rare to find in black metal.
Yeah, and another thing about kind of black metal, you know, this is one genre where people are like so particular, you know, like this is the first time I've really heard any band that sounded like this. And I know there's got to be some people out there that are listening right now. They're like, oh no, they ripped off this such and such band that only, you know, like 3 people have heard of, that have the super rare out of print, yada, yada, yada. You know, I don't care. Right. This is the first time I had heard personally anything that sounded like this, and I was just completely blown away. I don't know that I have anything else to add generally on it. And this is, I guess we can jump into the negatives. I don't have any songs written down other than just the opening track, which I mentioned, because they all kind of go together. Yep. Like when you listen to it start to finish, all the tracks each one maybe be a little bit different, but then they all just kind of blend together with, you know, the harp instrumentals in between, and kind of the ambient, moody stuff opening and closing the songs all throughout the album. So if I've got to nitpick it's just that, you know, you can kind of get lost in it, which isn't a bad thing, but sometimes it would be nice to mix it up a little bit more drastic. Like when you go from the harp instrumental to like the next track, you know, there's obviously a change there. And then a lot of times you'll go track to track, there isn't a change. Does that make sense to you? And then what else do you have negative about this?
Yeah, I get what you're saying. I think for this, and a lot of albums, I know we've had that as a complaint before. On this one, actually, it seems almost like a strength to me. And that's part of why I said you have to listen from the beginning to the end. If you're just going to be like, hey, I want to listen to track number 4. I don't remember what it is right off, but
right. Yeah. I know what you mean.
it's a hard album to do that. And so, I mean, I get what you're saying. And yeah, that can be a bit of a negative. It's just, to me, it's almost like you're going on this like adventure.
That's a great way to put it.
And if you don't go from the beginning to the end, you're missing out, I think, on, just the whole cohesion of it. I know some people,
and that may be by design also,
and it could be, and it could also be their sound. I haven't listened to anything. I guess they've got another album.
Yeah, I ordered both of them. That's how much I liked this.
Yeah, I haven't listened to the other one at all, but I mean, I'm assuming this is very close to their, quote unquote, their sound that every band has, but it is a negative because it's a very hard album to just jump in the middle of. And which I kind of did. I'd listen to a couple songs, and for some reason now YouTube like remembers where you're at if you go back and watch the same video again. I don't know.
Yeah.
I wasn't aware of that. Well, it jumped in like 13 minutes into the album, and it was like in the middle of the song. I'm like, what the crap? It's like, what the hell's going on? And so I had to actually rewind all the way back to the beginning and do it again. And so, yeah, it is a very hard album to just pick one song and be like, hey, yeah, this is it.
And I said I was nitpicking because I think you're going to be in agreement with me that it's not really a bad thing. That,
No.
It's all kind of blends together because it's, a lot of times people put emphasis on musicianship. Is this, I'm guilty of it too sometimes. Maybe I pay attention more to a catchy riff or a singer I like instead of just kind of the mood of how the music makes you feel overall. Anything else before we jump into the rating?
Yeah, a couple things. One, the production on this is outstanding.
Yeah, I agree. I think it matches what they're doing perfectly.
But it is absolutely outstanding. And for a band it's just as underground as these guys are. I mean, to be honest, I think the video, I watched the full album of this, had maybe 13,000 views or something like that, maybe. It may have been upwards of 20.
I hadn't paid that close attention, but yeah, I get what you're saying.
And I mean, in the world of YouTube and digital music and this and that, this band is about as far underground as most of them can be. So for them to have that level of production, I mean, you can hear all the instruments clearly when you need to. And so I think the production, I have to say on that, it was very, very well recorded, I think.
Okay, so jumping into the ratings, Vault star rating system, 1 star being the worst, 5 stars being the best. What did you give this album?
I am going to give it a 4 3/4.
That's the exact same score I have.
I can't quite go up to a perfect 5, but this is easily one of the best albums we've ever reviewed on here. As far as involved in, I mean, easily one of the best. If you are a fan of black metal, or kind of, medieval music, whatever, what have you, or just good music, this is on my must-buy list.
Yeah, it would have gotten a 5 if maybe, maybe this is just my, I guess, taste. If some of the songs would have had just a little bit more variety in them, like we spoke about. But yeah, this is one of the highest album reviews that we've ever done so far, I think. So this is a must-buy for, like you said, black metal fans, power metal. Maybe you're into live action role playing and you just want to get some music to pump you up. Maybe you want some background music for your next D&D night. Right. I don't know. It's such an awesome feeling that you get when you hear this album. So,
and in all seriousness, I will say this, and this sounds cheesy and nerdy as hell, but we're doing a music podcast, so screw it.
Of course.
If anybody has played like Demon Souls or any of the Dark Souls series, I wouldn't go to Bloodborne necessarily, but any of the Souls series games, this music could literally, it's like the just pure embodiment of that game. I mean, it's brutal when it needs to be, but underneath all of that, there's actually just this beautiful element to it. And it fits everything. So if you understand the Dark Souls series, I think you would really enjoy this music.
So there you go, 4 3/4 for this album by Obsequiae, Aria of Vernal Tombs, 2015 release. I don't know if I mentioned that earlier. Pretty awesome release. We're a little bit late to the party, but that's okay. We're trying to catch up with a lot of the newer stuff. So thanks for checking out the show. In the meantime, until the next show, you can check us out on social media, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. Subscribe, rate, and review on YouTube, iTunes, Stitcher, and Podomatic. And if you'd like to contribute to the show to help us keep going, patreon.com/thevault. Until next time, see ya.
Peace.